It's no secret that Nintendo saved the US video game market after the infamous crash of 1993. Among other reasons, a flood of bad games during the Atari era destroyed the public's trust of the gaming industry. But Nintendo managed to rebuild it from scratch, keeping a steady supply of quality titles at the audience's reach. In order to maintain the brand's image, Nintendo applied a very rigid set of rules to third-party developers, such as what kind of material they could show in their titles. Nintendo wouldn't allow things like excessive violence and sexual themes to pervade the NES, in an attempt to keep its products as family-friendly as possible. But, as Censored Gaming covered in the past, once in a while, the company's watchdogs would drop their guard, and themes otherwise considered objectionable would find their way into stores without any incident. Today, we'll talk a little more about this. Here are 8 licensed games that escaped Nintendo's censorship during the 8-bit era. Let's start with Acclaim's WWF Wrestlemania, which was released in 1989 and featured some of the biggest names in sports entertainment at the time. The game was more of a brawler than a wrestling title, since the action consisted mostly of button mashing with very few grappling moves. Characters could replenish health by grabbing items that would randomly just be across the ring, each one of them related to their in-game ring persona. For the Honky Tonk Man, it was a guitar. For Andre the Giant, a steak, and for Hulk Hogan, a crucifix. Nintendo had a strict policy regarding the display of any religious symbols in their games, as well as any mention of gods, but the Hulkster still somehow got a pass. It's possible that Nintendo made an exception in this case, since the catchphrase "say your prayers and take your vitamins" was as intrinsically connected to Hogan as wrestling itself. Moving on to Bionic Commando. Capcom's classic action game became infamous for presenting the audience with one of the goriest moments of the 8-bit era. In the original story, the hero, Lad Spencer, fights against a new Nazi empire, which was rebranded as The Bads for the American release. All Nazi symbols and references were removed, but the final boss is still an unmistakable Adolf Hitler, whose head explodes in very graphic detail once he's defeated. Another game which confronted the player of Nazi enemies was Go-Go 13, Top Secret Episode. Again, due to Nintendo's family-friendly censorship policies, there are no mentions of Nazism outside of Japan. However, as shown here, it's actually still possible to pick up a file with a swastika on the cover. Additionally, the final boss, Smirk, remains an obvious cyborg version of Adolf Hitler. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Go-Go 13, Top Secret Episode, is based on a manga by Takao Saito, a series following Duke Togo, a professional hitman, and stories full of violence and sex. The video game successfully duplicated the mystique of the comic book, and while some content was cut from the original Japanese release, a lot of it arrived in the US unscathed. For starters, in the sniper segments, it's possible to see clear blood spurts every time the target is hit, something that went completely against Nintendo's stance on blood and gore at the time. Top Secret Episode also had scenes where the hero's female companions would undress in front of him. The nudity was removed from the Western version, but the view from outside their hotel window, which heavily implied they had sex, remained. Finally, it's possible to find a pack of cigarettes and regain health by smoking them. Duke Togo wasn't the only smoker who kept this bad habit while working under Nintendo's umbrella though. Famously, in Metal Gear, a pack of cigarettes is the only item Solid Snake possesses at the start of the game. At first, they serve no apparent purpose, but if used during the final scene countdown, they'll double the time you have to escape the enemy base before it blows up. It's actually possible to finish Metal Gear without using them, rendering the item non-vital, which adds to the mystery of why it wasn't cut from the game. Nintendo didn't make the same mistake twice, and when Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel was released for the Game Boy Color in the year 2000, the cigarettes had their name changed to Fogger, which were described as a device that emits smoke. Even though Nintendo tried its best to keep any type of adult material away from the NES, quite a few titles were released with instances of nudity in them. Such is the case with River City Ransom, Technos Japan's beloved brawler. In it, players can visit bookshops and restaurants to buy items that increase the hero's attributes. One of the establishments at your disposal is a sauna, where the main character can have a bath and relax, while inadvertently mooning the audience. Culture Brain's RPG, The Magic of Scheherazade, also contains some nudity, but this time of a more otherworldly nature. The second boss, Curly, is based on the Hindu goddess of destruction and creation, Kali, who's commonly represented as a 6-armed figure with exposed breasts. While her name was changed for translation, she is still referred as female in the game dialogue, and in her second form, she transforms and her naked torso is clearly visible. It's true that Kali, or Curly, isn't actually human, but Nintendo's censorship policies extended even to monsters during that era, as seen with the Medusa in Castlevania 3, who had her female features severely lessened. It's curious that this somehow got a pass in not only showing a Hindu divine figure, but her bare assets as well. Next up is Taboo, The Sixth Sense, which is not actually really a game, but a tarot card reading simulator. Players would input their name, birth date, and gender at the start. Then the cartridge would read their luck using a tarot deck. One of the arcana is represented by a naked couple seen from behind, another of a woman baring her breast, and lastly, the Chimera, which is a lion body and a topless woman sticking out of its back. Finally, we have the NES version of Maniac Mansion. The original game was full of double entendre and dark humor, so Nintendo kept the adaptation under a microscope and objected to as much content as humanly possible. As previously covered by Censored Gaming, any sexual innuendo such as Nurse Edna's lines while imprisoning the main characters were removed. Nintendo also demanded the removal of a nude statue in the second floor of the mansion, as well as a Playboy poster and a mummy pinup from the workout room. Also in the original game, your character would be killed by the green tentacle while playing mating calls, the implication being that the creature killed you by having sex with you. No such thing happens in the Nintendo version. Maniac Mansion also went through some very heavy language cleaning, with words like kill, suck, and pissed being entirely removed, not only from the story's dialogue, but also from the arcade machines in the game room. The cabinet named Die Enemy Die was completely removed, and the other one called Kill Thrill was renamed to Muff Diver, and later to Tuna Diver, since Muff Diver also sounded sexual to Nintendo's watchers. Considering all the material that was cut from the NES adaptation of the game, it's mind-boggling that Nintendo managed to let one very clear instance of animal cruelty escape their grasp. While playing as Sid or Razor, gamers could steal Ed's hamster and microwave it until the rodent exploded. Then, it was possible to deliver the remains to its owners, who would promptly kill your character. When Nintendo got wind of this, they demanded that such a gruesome feature was removed from any future batch of cartridges. Curiously, this change only affected the PAL versions, since there wasn't a second run of the US version. As Nintendo's outrage at the Maniac Mansion hamster scene shows, while they tried very hard to keep their consoles family friendly, they did still sometimes miss things. This also perhaps explains how some of the other entries in the list were left uncensored. While Censored Gaming typically looks at things that did get censored, videos like this can be good from time to time, where we instead take a look at the reverse and things not being censored. If this is something you'd like to see more of, then please leave a comment below and hit that subscribe button, and until next time, thank you for watching.